Tonight on the Game On podcast, what a thriller. Showdown went to the wire, and boy, oh boy, was it an exciting finish for both Adelaide and Port Adelaide. Port Adelaide's young guns didn't quite get the job done, but they were impressive and they were hungry. And it's Sir Doug Nicholls' round to be celebrated by the AFL. And a cricketing legend retires from Test cricket. All right, let's do this. Welcome to the Game On podcast. My name's Pete, once again joined in the studio here with Malcolm. And Malcolm, how was your week and weekend?
Oh, uni won on the Saturday, and then the Crows and Norwood on the Sunday. So
you've had a fantastic
weekend.
weekend.
And Port lost in both. Yeah, so you can't complain about that.
I think you're going to get a bit of backlash for that one.
Yeah.
Mate.
Daryl Harper calls that the perfect weekend.
There you go. Mate, we absolutely enjoyed going to the game. Thank you for the tickets in the in winning those ones through SEN. Yep. We'll give them a little bit of a shout-out a bit later because we've got some footage to show about a contentious call, but we'll save that one for later. Coming up, obviously, in our past players, past legends, JC, John Cunningham from the Norwood Footy Club, which will be played on Friday. So just keeping everybody abreast of that. All right, let's get into Around the Grounds, mate.
Around the Grounds.
All right, we got a lot to cover tonight, but a little bit later on we're going to talk the SANFL, the soccer, and obviously the netball. But let's kick off with the Showdown, mate. Showdown 57 goes down to the wire, and let's just say that the Crows had it in hand, but Port Adelaide, their want, their will, their desire, probably just kept them in it for a little bit longer than what most expected.
And Adelaide's poor tactically. I thought they tried to save the game way too far out, and that very nearly cost them the game.
It did indeed. Your takeaway, obviously we had a little bit of a bird's eye view, I suppose, of the ground. And the one thing for me was that Butters, Horne-Francis and somewhat Bergman were running around like unregistered dogs at stages there, that nobody seemed to be on them and they were just at will, just doing what they wanted.
Oh, no doubt Adelaide's midfield got annihilated in reality. And in that way, so it was a bizarre game. You know, Adelaide's forward line, though, always, especially Thilthorpe, always looked dangerous. Fogarty was very good in the last quarter.
Yes.
Romemore was interesting that he was sort of given the licence because he actually set up the first goal from half back. His second goal from half back. Rankin went forward, so that worked because up till then I would have said the points were well and truly with the Port coaching panel. The Bergman on Dawson and playing Rankin tight. You know, Saligo couldn't get in the game at all.
Yep.
And Adelaide's midfield. And Rosie, I can't work out. Keys sort of made a name for himself as that role, negating at half forward. Why he totally wasn't used on Rosie at all, and it ended up Taylor, who did okay or better than what Rosie running around like an unregistered dog with 21 touches in the first half did. But again, for mine, that's where Adelaide, still a massive question mark against the coaching. It's still reactive. You know, there was nothing proactive in the game in Fremantle to tag Sarong and Brayshaw. Yep. And, I think there's still real question marks about him defensively.
Yep.
Well, they've got the big okay, Nick Dacos might be carrying an injury, but he's had 9 days to recover. Good luck if they're as poor defensively on then Dacos.
Him 60% makes it very interesting. We'll talk about the Collingwood-Adelaide game a little bit later. Let's stick with Adelaide for a moment. They found a way to almost lose the game, but I question whether they were hungry at the right moments. And being at the ground, that was probably the one thing for me that stood out a little bit at times.
Yeah, no, I didn't mind him. I personally didn't mind in that regard. I just thought tactically they tried to save the game. And the classic of that was the last minute before three-quarter time, where if Cumming had gone straight away, there were two people loose inside 50 and it would have been a shot for goal. Yeah, he was told to hold and have a shot, and he was too far out.
And that came from the bench because we could
ridiculous.
See it, obviously, at the ground as well. Mate, I mentioned it probably a little bit off air, and may have done it a little bit on air the week before, but Walker, I think he needs a spell. He just doesn't look as explosive at the moment. His forward craft is great, but he's not that roaming forward at the moment. I'd rather see him play closer to goal.
Yeah, it'll be interesting. Big question mark on him body-wise. He's not seen to be moving as freely. He's seen to be struggling a bit with his back, not bending over in that way.
Mm-hmm.
But they won't leave him. I don't think they'll leave him out this week against Collingwood. And with more out, they'll be trying to expose them.
Yep. That was going to be my question as to when is the right time to rest him. Is it West Coast the following week with leading into who is it after
West
that?
Coast.
West Coast. Then it's a bye or there's a bye somewhere in there.
So they may wait for the bye. I'm not sure.
Yep. It's going to be an interesting watch. Thilthorpe doesn't look comfortable for kicking outside 50. I made mention of this, obviously, at the time. You had a pretty good explanation as to why he may not feel as comfortable kicking from outside 50.
I think you'd question at the moment with being able to do the ball drop properly with so many finger injuries. And you see his hands are taped up to buggery.
Yep.
So he's probably struggling guiding it down properly.
From a distance, whereas from 30 to 40, it's maybe a shorter guiding.
Yeah, maybe. But, yeah, his kicking from 50-odd metres out was pretty questionable.
It was.
But inside close. And it's just his hands. He was too big.
Mm-hmm.
And obviously they'll hope he's too big.
Too strong this weekend.
It'll be interesting to see who he gets this weekend.
It will be. Mate, his first half, he clunked everything. And that's a sign of a player that's in form, even though he's had some finger issues. He still finds a way of grabbing it, and he's probably the safest pair of hands, well, maybe in the Australian cricket, for the Australian cricket team as well, really, when you think about it.
Really, at halftime, it was Rosie just who'd been brilliant versus Thilthorpe.
Yep.
It was those two had the most impact on the game, and then probably Butters after halftime as well. Like, it's pretty unusual, the winning side, to really only have one of the best three. Because I think there was a gap till another player after that.
I totally agree with you 100%. We'll talk about that a little bit later on as well. Rankin was sublime at times, I will say at times, because he just didn't quite have his usual spark. But when they moved him and he got in the play for that 10, 15-minute squirt, he was fantastic.
Well, 17 seconds effectively.
Well, that's true. Could he be arguably Adelaide's best recruit ever?
Yeah, it's a chance. It's a hard one in that way.
Well, let's go through them quickly. Question without notice. Jarman.
The two grand finals, 5 and 6 in the grand final. Yep. At the moment he's number one.
Yep. Andrew McLeod.
Well,
because we forget that Fremantle discarded it.
Yeah, it was a trade.
Yep.
Yeah, if counting that, it's those two. Yes, yep.
Who else would be on that list? I'm scratching
They're the main
a little bit.
two.
They are the main two.
So Rankin's got to perform in finals, then Adelaide's got to make it first.
Yep.
And be around the mark, and then. But the weather on the G in September, it is made for someone like Rankin.
Yep. And Horn Francis as well, which we have talked about previously.
Yep.
Let's move on to Port Adelaide, mate. Their never say die, give up attitude was evident. They looked hungry and almost pulled off a miraculous win. It was really on the back of Connor Rosie.
Yeah, Rosie
and Zach Butters.
Yeah, look, it's their last 4 or 5 picked aren't good enough, and they seem to be just shuffling the Titanic on that one.
Look, are they where Adelaide was at 3 years ago? Maybe 2 years ago?
Possibly. There's no doubt that Peatling, Cumming and Neil Bullen have helped Adelaide's depth.
Yep.
There's not a lot. Lockie Murphy, they played in one game, which was a fateful error at selection.
Yes.
Don't worry about the umpiring in round 3. Worry about selection.
Yep.
In that game. I just think the last few... I was disappointed Logan Evans got dropped. And okay, you can say, he's a Norwood guy, so you probably got more interest.
A little more bias,
Yeah, I don't think some of it by interest, but I think he showed enough last year to know, right, he can play. Let's stick with him. Picking Jed McEntee, don't worry, the Crows were pretty happy that he was playing.
Absolutely.
And, let's just say a couple of comments back there were pretty interesting.
Absolutely. Yeah. The emergence of Miles Bergman, along with Butters, Horn Francis and Rosie, were the difference in this game. What happens if Port Adelaide lose 2 of them? And I mean to trade. What if you lose another one to injury or another 2 to injury?
Well, then it's rebuild time.
It is, isn't it?
No doubt about that whatsoever.
Yep.
I think they're fighting at the moment because you could probably go through that list at the moment. There's 10 or so that big question marks. I thought they might have had a look at Whitlock on Saturday night. I think they'll do that in the next couple. I think they have to do it in the next couple of weeks because
does that have Josh Carr's stamp written all over it? As in, he's starting to plan for the future a little bit.
Yeah, I just think Whitlock. They went out of their way. Well, he was an interesting recruit in terms of drafting, and I think he's a forward. He showed a bit at SANFL level. He was very highly regarded as a junior, both him and his brother, who's at North Melbourne.
Yep.
I just think with what they've got at the moment, with Marshall and Lukosius injured, I think I would have. I would have had a look. I would have had a dip.
Absolutely. Bergman's obviously jumped up. St Kilda seems to be the talking point for him and maybe Butters to the Western Bulldogs.
Yeah.
What trade capital have those two teams got to be able to potentially pull that off?
I think you worry about that more as it gets closer. Like you don't know. Teams somehow managed to get things done. You know, you can argue that they got unders for Houston this year. Would they not satisfied? You've got to remember they've got Butters is still under another year's contract.
Right. Now, this leads me into my next question. I think I've asked it a couple of weeks ago, but I'm going to ask it again. If Butters stays, that doesn't give them the draft capital for someone like a Wangani Malira.
Yeah, maybe, but he's unrestricted. He's restricted next year, so you can match that to force the trade still.
Yep.
So,
I still think Port are vulnerable because of the Jason Horne-Francis trade a couple of years ago. And don't get me wrong, I'd do that deal every day of the week and twice on Sunday. Not a problem. But it does leave them in a precarious position. And now you've got two seemingly guns leaving. Possibly.
Yep. But it's more so I don't think there's enough depth at the bottom end of their list.
Yep.
Now, they recruited so you've recruited Soldo and Sweet.
And you didn't
from
play
other
them on
clubs
the weekend.
And dropped them to bring in young Vicente. So it was a big call. And look, he played well. I thought in purely ruck-wise, I thought he did a very good job.
I totally agree with you there. That leads very good segue into the next one was selection of certain players meant that they were better matched against the Crows for this particular contest.
Yeah, I think so. But also I think Sweet had been annihilated the last couple of weeks. Like, there would have been a bit of frustration at how much English took him to the cleaners the week before, and Cherry had annihilated him for North Melbourne the previous game. So he'd had two stinkers in a row where he hadn't been remotely competitive. Yep. I think that's the Port big thing, to not even really compete. That's where
it sort of broke down and they had to make a change. Totally get it. If Rioli plays, do the power get up?
We'll never know because Mike Clancy's got a good record there on him and all that. We'll never know, but
it does make a little bit of a difference.
Very close game, and a player through his own behaviour made himself not allowed to play in the game.
Fair.
And you can yes, we can say, the Port, and I understand where they're coming from, and I think they're quite right to say that people should go and do the course, and Port Adelaide have now put the course out themselves. They've gone on the front foot. Surprise, surprise, AFL nowhere again.
We're going to talk about that in a minute, yes.
I've gone on the front foot. Look, I get that, and that's why I'm probably not being as hard on Port as I have been on Richmond.
Yep.
But it was still his behaviour. Made it. If he hadn't have been a bloody idiot and sent that message, he plays in the Showdown.
Yep. It would have been interesting to see if that little bit of X factor may have just helped Port get over the line, considering the engine room was really firing at one stage.
Well, they certainly had enough of the ball in there. Well, so that's where...
How many inside forward 50s?
50s, yeah. So that's where you go at the moment. Well, if we just had that touch more class in Rioli, we had enough of the ball. So I down it. They're not saying it publicly, but I dare say privately they'd be furious.
And there's be a few supporters that would probably think along that line as well.
There are.
We sort of bumped into on the way out as well.
Yeah.
Showdown medalist, Connor Rosey, but Butters was probably in the conversation as well as Stilthorpe. Yeah. Unusual that a losing team player wins a Showdown medal, but it's probably reflective of how well he played.
So it's John Cock previously.
Yes.
There was a tie.
Yep.
Where, Simon Goodwin and Burgoyne, I reckon it was, tied, and one other.
Yep.
So
it's a rarity.
It is a rarity, but I thought it was a good decision.
I do too.
You and I were sitting there at the end going, and I said, for mine, Rosie's got to get it.
and I thought Butters was around the mark, or Thilthorpe if you're looking at the winning side.
Yeah.
But I think the right decision was made. There's a few people scratching their head, but I totally agree with the decision. It could have been any one of those three, and I think in the end, Rosie just had that class.
Yeah, the class.
It was just
brilliant.
class.
His evasiveness is extraordinary.
Yep. Whereas Thilthorpe probably had a mortgage on it up until half time, even though him and Rosie were probably going toe to toe. But I think through the bulk of the game, it was probably Rosie.
Rosie did more in the second half.
That's exactly right. Question without notice, mate, and I know what your answer is going to be, but I'd like to throw it out there. Can Adelaide win a finals with Riley O'Brien rucking, considering his stats are a bit padded by, him getting the hit-outs, but it's never to the Crows' advantage, and Port Adelaide took full advantage of it.
He's not a great ruckman. It was interesting. So he did the 2 games this year where he's been reasonable was Briggs against GWS, who's also been out for. But he did well against the Cunningham.
Yep.
Now, you wonder if they've set him there and they've read the weakness strengths right. We'll counter him this way. And Sam Balderstone is Sam Balderstone, I rate his ruck smarts.
Absolutely.
Obviously, I do know him reasonably well in that regard. Yep. And I observed him in that role with Paynham. So it's not like I haven't had experience there.
I saw him against Carlton the week before, and he was really up and about and really getting him fired
up. I'm just saying I've watched Sam
I've
watched Sam do ruck coaching, so it's not like I haven't seen any of that. So there, but on the weekend, it's just a hit. And you can do what you like with stats. Like they said he had more hits to advantage. Well, hang on. Adelaide got annihilated around the clearances. So how can you say that?
This is why I bring it up.
Yeah, I just think it's bullshit.
He was almost one of the highest ranked players on the field for that, and it's that stats padding that I think hides a lot of deficiencies.
He did take more marks than normal.
Yep.
We've got to be fair there. Look, and in watching the game again, and I made myself watch the game again, not because I wanted to see if I thought the umpiring was as bad as I thought it was at the game.
We've got that coming up as well.
Yeah. And O'Brien was a bit better than I thought watching and didn't make quite. But he's just so ungainly. Like one of his kicks went completely off the side of the boot and somehow went to a Crows player at right angle. Now, he didn't mean to kick it there. He's just an uncoordinated giraffe.
Yep. Well, I think the mark late in the fourth quarter and him looking across goals would have had a lot of Crows people with their heart in their mouth.
Goals, I reckon he might have got shot.
Yes, he wouldn't have got out of Adelaide Oval alive. And there was a lot of players telling him to settle down. So a bit of a frustration. I know it's a little bit of a bugbear for you.
Yeah, it is. But I actually made the point too, a couple of people were talking about it. When a player normally sets themselves for the mark, you watch them and set and it's coordinated and he just seems to be put his arms up because he's so bloody big.
He ends up clunking it.
He catches the odd one, but it's not a jump at the ball with conviction.
Yep.
Okay, you can say in this case, hang on, he took an important mark deep in defence.
Yep.
After Keen's brilliant mark.
The
mark
on
to give
wing,
off to Rankin.
Yep.
So in that way he was better than normal. But I'm not a fan. Look, as I've said, for mine, ruck has been Adelaide's biggest weakness since 2017.
Do you think ruck in general has changed because of the centre circle?
Has a little bit.
And it's become more of a wrestling ruck where someone like a DeConing can actually dominate because...
jump and get a clean hit occasionally.
And can run as well. Yeah. So that may be the evolution of ruck moving forward a little bit.
Yeah.
All right, mate, let's move on. Let's talk about some red-hot topics. But before we do, mate, I'm going to read out a couple of statements. You tell me what it was. The tackle for the weekend.
Yeah, great tackle by Brown on Goss.
Yes.
But I was going to mention it later. We can do it now, though.
Yeah, absolutely. Fire away.
Absolute pet hate. And ironically, Tim Weatherald and I first spoke about this probably 30 years ago.
Yep.
And it was interesting. It was a young kid, took the ball, took 4 steps and bounced it.
Yes.
I've advocated for years
run
at
distance.
Junior level, I would have a rule if you run under 10 metres before bouncing it, free kick against you.
Yep.
Because it's a shocking habit to get into. I think it hurt Jacob Newton.
Yep.
Admittedly, his injuries hurt him as well.
Yes.
Chance getting drafted. He's now showing a bit for Norwood.
Yeah.
But it's such a shocking habit. And invariably it's the kid who's good because they get the ball so much.
Yes.
Let them go. And because they dominate junior footy, people ignore it. You know, they've got 30 kicks.
Through.
Oh, how good's young Johnny? Geez, Johnny Smith's a gun, isn't he? You know. I said, geez, got to get that out. And I did. My first thought wasn't great tackle. My thought, you bloody idiot. Because if he hadn't bounced it, he wouldn't have got caught.
I think the follow-up from the missed spoil in the middle of the ground, I think, was certainly warranted for the tackle. And it was perfectly executed too.
Brilliant tackle.
Considering we've talked about it over the last couple of weeks as well. So a little bit of learnings there. AFL players are learning on the run. All right, mate, the mark.
No, I want to go back. Since you're a Carlton man.
Yes.
The only player I've ever seen to this day bounce the ball running to his advantage is
Paddy Cripps.
Craig Bradley.
Oh, Craig Bradley.
Craig Bradley turned his body
sideways.
He was reading the play and still evaluating what was around him.
Yep.
He's the only player to this day, I will say, who used that running a short distance, bouncing it to his advantage.
Yeah, I think Cripps does it a bit too, but
but
I think Bradley was a master. I think you're exactly right. All right, mate, the mark.
Oh, awesome. Absolutely brilliant. It was courageous, committed.
Mark Keane we're talking about here, yes.
Yeah, it's the showdown moment of Showdown 57.
Yep.
Every showdown seems to have a moment, especially when it's close.
Mm-hmm.
That was the moment.
It was certainly one of those ones that will be played and played and played again, and it was certainly warranted as well. All right, mate, the streak. GWS. Down at GMHBA.
Incredible, isn't it? Yeah, look, I called into the Arkabar on my way home from Noarlunga to watch the last 10 or so minutes, and it was 1 point the difference when it first started, and Geelong blew it.
Yep.
They really blew it, and Greg blew it.
Yes.
There was Blixar's missed goal, was the short pass, didn't for Dangerfield, Stengel missed a couple. They had chance after chance.
They did indeed.
Where they absolutely cost themselves the game.
And GWS just talked themselves into winning another game down there. It's amazing, isn't it? We talked about it briefly, I think on Saturday night. We were talking about how GWS have got to play somewhere during the something's happening at their home ground. I don't know if it's a show or
play at Cunningham Park.
I was about to say they're talking about going to the MCG to play a couple of games. Go down to Cunningham Park. I agree.
Go to the Cats land,
mate.
Now incredible stat came up, and well done to Timmy G bringing this up tonight. A GWS player has now played 23 games.
Yep.
Right. He has played at more AFL venues, different venues than Scott Pendlebury.
Yep.
In his 400-plus games.
That's crazy.
What a joke of a competition in a lot of regards.
Well, but the GWS Giants are owned by the AFL. It's part of their brainchild, so they've got to go where they're told, which is interesting.
Yeah, right. Look, but on that, if it wasn't a money-making business, and non-profit bullshit, it would have been a relocated side from Melbourne.
Yep.
Like, it should have been the Gold Coast Kangaroos. Immense frustration from Wayne Jackson that he couldn't get that over the line because they just went out of that. You know, let's just say he's not sending a Christmas card to James Brayshaw.
No.
And nor was anyone from the AFL back then, and in Wayne's well and truly speaking up for Wayne.
Yep.
Just ridiculous that it wasn't, that they couldn't do that.
Yes.
And it would be a better competition with less teams.
Yep.
Gold Coast Kangaroos, St Kilda Giants, whatever.
Yep.
Another side, Western Bulldogs, Taswegians, whatever. Yes, I get it that it disappoints Victorian people, and I get that.
Well, hang on.
But let's remember, Sydney were South Melbourne.
Yep. Agreed. Well, let's throw this back. I'm going to throw this back on you, right?
Yep.
Let's say the AFL want a 20th team.
Yep.
Which we all know is probably a big stretch. And we love Norwood as much as anybody, and knowing that Norwood is wanting to stay in the SANFL. But what if an AFL club came to Norwood and said, look, we want to merge with you to be able to bring you into the competition as the 20th team? Would you do it?
Oh, I think Norwood would.
That's what I'm saying.
Would I want to do it? No.
No, but I'm saying as part of the AFL competition.
Yeah, personally,
would you do it?
I would think Norwood Football Club administratively would make that decision.
Absolutely.
Would I want that to happen? No.
No. So then that says, to a lot of VFL clubs that, they've got their roots there. They don't want to be
and I get
as well.
that.
And
I get that. I get the supporters.
Yep.
I totally get the supporters. But I'm saying there should be less teams in the AFL.
I agree. We'll talk about that a little bit more as we go along as well. Mate, the draw.
Yeah, it's a result. I've got no problem with it,
there
personally.
You go. Yep. Golden goal or extra time?
Draw.
Just a draw. I love it. And, mate, I'm going to play something, and I want you to have a listen, and this will lead us into our next round of topics.
Lindsay pumps the D's back to full forward after the kick, and battle collided with his own man, Hardwick. Pickett got legs. Free kick at the top. What? No free. He got grabbed by the leg, running into goal to pick up the football. Oh, my godfather.
How can you miss that?
How can you miss that? There's 4 of them. 4 of them.
Oh, extraordinary.
45,000 people saw it clear as day.
Oh, boy. They could score review fingers hitting and touching a ball, but a goal like that.
Sack a ball!
D'Ambrosio kicks the ball to half forward. Gorn.
Mate, we watch footy on a regular basis. Someone as good as Jared Healy and Jared Waitley, obviously part of the SEN coverage there, sees it more than most, and he's even losing his absolute mind as to what's going on with umpires.
And he's far more balanced. And
this is what I'm saying.
He probably defends them in general.
Correct.
Yeah, I've got to be honest. I was at the Arkborough at that stage watching the game with some members of the Kay Chandler's family and catching up there. Yes, I did sell some books, mate.
Well done.
There was anger, there was frustration, there was laughter, more just how bad it was, etc. That's the worst decision of the season.
Can you understand where he's coming from, considering we talked about it a little bit on Saturday night, and look, you made your presence known, I suppose, in the bay that we're in about just letting them play and these little silly free kicks or 50-metre penalties that shouldn't be there. And there was people coming up after the game going, look, I'm done with the umpires. Yeah. I'm over it. So I think there's a growing sentiment out there. But the AFL came out and basically said, well, we had 3-4 learner umpires. How does that happen? And why are the experienced umpires not
it's just bullshit.
Umpiring?
It's just bullshit. You don't get promoted to the AFL panel until you've done a lot of umpiring. Don't say that crap. Yep. You haven't got a kid in a green shirt umpiring an AFL game that it's their first ever game.
No.
So that's just crap by the AFL. Absolute disgraceful.
Because when I heard
the coaching given, the positioning, the instructions is fucking disgraceful.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with you.
And I'm so angry as an umpire. You heard my thoughts Saturday night. I went and watched the game again.
Yep.
And for mine, in the first quarter alone, there were 6 unwarranted free kicks paid.
Yep.
Which I just wouldn't. I watched. Look, the one again, which was against Butts to Georgiadis.
Yes.
Watching that again, yes, that was there.
Yep.
I actually saw it, no problem, with a better angle than where, obviously, with the other end where we were.
Yep.
But overall, there were 6 in the first quarter.
Yep.
4 to Port, 2 to Adelaide. Which was shit-ass decisions, in my opinion.
Yeah, no. We all want...
I was so angry.
For the benefit of the game, we wanted to be left alone.
Just leave it alone. Let the players decide. Like, it's smacked of umpires keyed up for a showdown. We've got to keep it under control and all that.
You took the words right out of
sorry,
my mouth,
you're not umpiring, Wingfield versus Kilburn or anything like that, where player safety must be the number one priority.
Yep.
And if you get off the ground and no player's been hurt and you've still got four wheels on your car and that, you're in front.
Yep.
Now, out of that, just there, and I could name heaps of sides. You haven't got that at AFL level.
Yep.
You don't have to worry about that. If any AFL player like Houston last year, you've got all the cameras. That looks after that.
Exactly right.
And you had the umpire panic and reported Keane on the spot. If you see it, it's just really, and it just got dismissed. It got thrown out. Now, how often do you see an umpire make a report on the game day now? Very rarely. It's only generally if a guy like a staker on Hall is a king hit.
Yep.
Where you have to.
Yep.
Where he just panicked. It was just crap.
Mate,
it was shocking.
2 comments. One was from you on the weekend, and I think it was absolutely perfect. We are here to watch the football, not you.
Yeah,
and that was a real. And again, I don't want to be bashing the umpires as far as decision make, but it is very much like that a bit at the moment. The second one was actually Jordan Lewis. I think it was on the couch last night on Fox. He was talking about where the position of the umpires, where they're taking the corridor away from the players. This is a product of 4 umpires, isn't it?
Yeah, but they've then got the player, because they're so worried about the umpire getting in the way, and if the umpire can read it, you don't get in the way in the middle. He's got him out the boundary line, and there also seemed to be a thought, okay, if we have the umpire out there where the crowd is, he's got the same view as the crowd, will satisfy the crowd. It's bullshit.
Yep.
There's so many guesses. You look at a decision, you go, that's ridiculous.
Is that because
then you look at the umpire, and it's just terrible.
Is that because we've got a generation of umpires that haven't played the game?
Massively. And
Played
that's been
very little.
Oh, it's more than a generation now. Look, I've gone through. I haven't done it this year, but I dare say the results are very similar.
Yep.
It was 4. The most it's ever been in the before that was 6 out of the panel of 32 had played adult football. It was generally 4 and sometimes 5.
Yep.
And now I maintain it's a game you've got to have played as an adult. You don't have to play it at the elite level.
No, just to understand.
You've got to play it as an adult, not as a kid. And you watch that. There's no footy now.
Yep.
There's just a complete, and the instructions are,
All right, I've got 2 questions for you here. If the umpires are to go full-time, would we see more amateur footballers take up umpiring? Because it is it would become a full-time job?
Yeah, possibly.
And should the umpires be? This is the second part of my question. Should umpires be full time, considering this is the elite level of sport in Australia, or one of the elite levels in Australia?
Yeah, I'm still not sure on that. I'm not sure how much he can do in that. One, get rid of the bounce whatsoever.
Okay.
So,
is that why a lot of the experienced umpires have retired?
Oh yeah, you do. It's terrible for your back.
Yep.
It is shocking.
I've tried to do it just
I broke my nose at Ardross, and so, my first game on the country panel, blood everywhere. Back then, I just kept going.
Yep.
And that.
So would someone like Razor Ray still be in the game to be able to mentor some of these?
Oh, yeah. And the stupid part about it is you've got to remember you're practicing that to the nth degree. So out of your 10 hours a week, say, training, you're probably practicing bouncing for at least 3 hours of it. So and it's crap.
Again, like we said a couple of weeks ago, concentrate on the pushing the
back,
the
only
high tackles.
Sport in the world which has an umpire have to perfect the skill which has nothing to do with the game.
Yep.
It's ridiculous. And everyone, oh, wow, do you ever leave, go, oh, jeez, how good was the bouncing today?
Yep.
What a load of bullshit.
Yep.
Like, people say now, it's unique, it's a part of the fabric, we don't lose it. Within 2 weeks, you forget. Do you forget now that they throw it up around the ground? No.
Should it be just the first bounce of the game and that's
nothing,
it?
Personally.
Nothing. Yep.
Nothing.
Straight up jump
so that you got to remember, even if it's the first bounce, you've got to practice that skill all the time.
That's true.
Get rid of it.
Yep. It is an antiquated rule that needs to be looked at. All right, let's move on with a couple of other hot topics. The Rioli saga hits a new low with Port Adelaide sending a letter to the AFL 4 weeks ago stating that there were problems. Again, the AFL are asleep at the wheel.
There is no leadership whatsoever at the AFL at the moment. It is the worst it's ever been, and by a space.
Mm-hmm. I can't see us getting an invite to any AFL functions the way we're going here,
very
mate.
safe there.
Or anyone coming on the show from the AFL.
Yeah.
It's a problem, isn't it, that there's no leadership, and the clubs are actually basically deciding that, look, you're not going to do anything about it. We'll try and do something about it, which is what Port Adelaide and the Bulldogs and Hawthorn and Geelong have done, have done, and all of a sudden now they're getting in trouble for it. I mean, come on, it shouldn't have come to this in the first place.
And I think it probably shows that clubs let each other know. It showed that they haven't got any confidence in the AFL. If they thought there was really good leadership, the AFL, they would have.
Well, you put it on the agenda last week. Could there be a vote of no confidence?
Could
it get to a stage?
I think it's the most anger I've ever heard. I'm 62, been around the traps, obviously got a few contacts, as you know.
Absolutely.
Speak to people. I think it's the most probably is disillusioned. There was a time back, there were people very frustrated at the, Andy Demetrio was so autocratic. It was my way or the highway. So there was frustration there and all that. But I think there's just total disillusionment at the moment where they think they're just nowhere near good enough.
Yep.
Well, I could show you some messages, there. Obviously, I can't.
Yep.
And there's just no confidence whatsoever.
It's, look, the game's never been more popular and there's more people going to the game, but there's also a ton of frustration that's coming with that. I'd certainly like to have the first two without the third one, and I think the AFL need to do a bit of work there. All right, mate, let's run through these ones pretty quickly. Trade speculation, does it become a form of tanking or draft tampering, especially if Oscar Allen decides that he's not going to play for the remainder of the year, and then West Coast get compensated pick 2?
It is. I'm trying to think of Frawley for Melbourne years ago for number 3, and so there have been things like that. It is. It's wrong, but I think you probably get rid of the scrap of that. Like you think Buddy Franklin, because where Hawthorn finished, I think they got draft choice 17, and they get that for that. So the system's wrong. Yep,
it needs to be tidied up. That's for sure. Is Oscar Allen worth pick 2 though?
Oh shit, no.
No, I wouldn't have put him in that one either. Is Jamara Ugle-Hagan in that boat as well? We hear news that he's taken himself off to get some work on himself done. If he comes back to football, and that's a big if he comes back and decides that he is going to play, what's the compensation look like there?
Who knows? I just think it's too hard at the moment. I think it's just too far away. I think what he's done now, hopefully, is the first step of him admitting he's got some problems. You've got to look.
Well, remember Jesse Hogan was in this boat, not to this degree, but he was in this boat as well when he was playing in his early days.
Look, with most people with problems and that, you only think, look, I now haven't had a drink for 12 years. I finally admitted I had a problem. Stop bullshitting.
Yep.
And that. And that's the key. You've got to be honest to yourself.
Absolutely. And it's good to see that, potentially, something that was going off the rails looks like it might just be getting back on the rails, which would be fantastic for Jamara. The Melbourne dilemma, what do they do with their ageing stars? Obviously the Clayton Oliver, that's trying to spit that one out. Clayton Oliver is probably the big one from last year, but it probably becomes more and more prevalent now. And what do they do with him and potentially Petrarca?
Yeah, I'm not sure. To their credit, it looks like they've recruited a couple, drafted a couple real good. Like Langford looks like he could be a superstar.
Yep.
30 and 3 again on the week at 3 goals.
Yes.
From a wing, arguably best on ground again. So, there, but they're certainly there. Like, Viney has struggled for a reasonable part of the year as well.
Yep. Do they try and
Oliver
rebuild on the run?
As a tagger, Petrarca wanted out. There's still a lot of, May's body's catching up with him. So there's a lot of questions there on Melbourne.
Yep.
Who knows?
Do they pull the ripcord now and look to on trade and get some different looks in there to potentially get them back up the ladder? Because at the moment, I just don't see it.
It's a real hard one. And also, it's not like they're a greatly supported club in that way, that if they bottom right out,
it could
their membership fall right away. And, so it's not an easy one.
All right, mate.
Now, they leave on their Range Rovers when they're competing for finals, let alone if they're down the bottom.
They do. All right, mate, I've got a ton of questions here to go. Just give me a 1 or 2 word answer on this.
Yep.
The Suns 7-0 in Darwin.
Humidity, they are guns.
Absolutely. Free-to-air TV, this is.
Frustrating there's not more of it. Geelong v Collingwood was the classic.
Yep. Soft cap. Should it be put back up to pre-pandemic levels?
It certainly should be increased.
Yep. Are Essendon as good as they really, or as their win-loss states at the moment?
Probably not, but to their credit, with the injuries they've got, you've got to give them a big tick for their tenacity.
Sir Doug Nicholls round. Absolutely a great opportunity to celebrate our Indigenous talent.
Very much so, and the Guernseys and that are brilliant as usual. There's a lot of work goes into them and a lot of inventiveness and creativity and some of them just look sensational.
And it brings the culture, to the wider public, which is fantastic.
Yeah.
Mate, you can give me a little bit more of a explanation on this next one. Match review system and gradings.
Yeah, look, it's funny how Lee Matthews brought it up last night with Reckless. I thought all along that should have been in it. I am completely flummoxed, stunned, bewildered how Bo McCreary wasn't cited.
Yes.
I'm not alone in the AFL people who think that.
Is that because the outcome didn't match the
just because
action?
he wasn't concussed.
Yep.
It was a terrible tackle. It was the old-fashioned sling one action, and he's just so lucky the guy wasn't concussed.
Yep.
Now, I showed it to you again just before we started the show.
Absolutely.
For mine, the Fremantle player had to be taken off for a scat test. It should have been regarded as careless.
Yep.
Medium impact, and so it's one game. I just can't believe nothing. Not a fine, nothing.
Yep.
And I'm sorry, that's where it happens. A decision like that, you immediately go, geez, Michael Christian, what club did he play for? Mm-hmm. It's wrong. And it's piss weak. The AFL actually have the power to press a charge themselves, to do nothing on that again. Purely because it's outcome-based and not looking that was bloody dangerous.
Yep.
Yeah.
It is stopping in its tracks pretty quickly.
All
right, mate.
Furious.
Let's get back to our 1 or 2 word answers.
Yep.
Pre-finals bye, yes or no?
No.
No. Pre-grand final bye, yes or no?
I don't mind that because it then fixes up the concussion issue.
Love it. Sub-rule,
No.
get rid of it.
Yep.
5 players on the bench.
Yes.
Absolutely. North Melbourne selling games.
Should have relocated.
Can they?
They should be in Darwin. Should be the Gold Coast Kangaroos.
Can they still relocate?
I think they can, but they probably don't have to financially anymore. But
because they've sold games.
Yeah,
though.
but then you're selling 2 games. And look, I hope they lose both those games in WA.
Yep.
So,
anyway, I know we expanded a little bit more on that.
Yep.
Jackson to Melbourne.
Yeah.
Yes or no?
No, I'd still be surprised.
Ruck wrestling instead of running up. Yes or no?
I understand why.
Yep.
Because of the PCL injury. And
Yep.
there was so many. That's posterior cruciate, which is done a huge amount with ruckman clashing each other, the bashing of the knees. Mm-hmm. So it's not ACL, it's not anterior cruciate, it's posterior, which isn't as bad. But there were so many ruckmen missing 8-10 weeks with a PCL.
Yep. Teams that are not playing well but still getting wins. Hawthorn, Collingwood, the Crows, and GWS. Who's your pick out of those 4?
I just think we've got to remember that you're not going to win every week and all that. Look, I thought Collingwood against Fremantle in terms of their structure and all. It was structure versus onslaught of ball inside the 50 and structure won. Fremantle's ball use was atrocious, but structure, they are brilliant.
Would you say Adelaide's structure held up against Port Adelaide in that same sort of game or result?
I think it did to some extent. I didn't quite agree with as much as one of the Crows.
I'm with you. I think the Pies are well drilled.
I was saying how glowing it was. But look, I think Worrell especially, he was probably the 4th best player on the ground. It was good. Akeem was okay. Butts was okay.
Yep.
And Mike Laney was good defensively, probably not quite as good offensively this game as he has been.
Yes.
So out of that, it was probably more and their structure wise did hold up. You got to give them that.
Have Sydney lost their identity?
I just think they've just got so many injuries. They really have, and they're just nothing left up forward to play
But their identity though.
Identity. Maybe a little bit.
Yep.
But handling up forward is you or I could tag in that way.
I wouldn't mind a game at those figures, that's for sure. Tagging, is it going to become the next in trend? Or it needs to be the next trend, I suppose?
Oh, look, there's a certain role for that. And look, even just to really check. So St Kilda against Fremantle didn't really tag Sarong or Brayshaw, but they really made sure they were close. and it was more the old-fashioned man-on-man once it got to a forward of centre or just there around there attacking, and then played them close. So it was just smart where the Crows were really dumb against Freo.
Last touch out of bounds.
Yes.
I love it.
I don't love the rule, but I think at least it gets rid of this stupidity and yet another rule. And the umpires don't understand it anyway. Like there was the one, as you correctly said, against Finlayson, the poor bloke.
Well, his momentum's carrying him to the line.
Yeah, you couldn't do anything with that.
How could he? Yeah.
It was just stupid.
It was. And the last one, mate, Tasmanian draft picks or concessions. What do you think of them? Have you seen them?
I've only glimpsed at it.
1, 3, 5, 7, 9, 11 and 13.
And
but 3, 5, 7, 9 and 13 need to be on-traded.
As I said, it should be a relocated side. There's too many sides now.
Would you like to see it be North Melbourne, St Kilda or the Western Bulldogs? A question without notice. Sorry, mate.
As I said, it should be the Gold Coast Kangaroos. So, yeah, you can say North Melbourne. Yeah, I don't really mind. But it's just there's too many teams now.
For me, I think it's the Kangaroos. And then what you could do is actually have two pretty evenly split conferences. And you could actually get home and away basically for those teams, plus a couple of showcase games against somebody.
If the teams had been relocated, you could actually have a bit of a fairer competition. It wouldn't be the joke of Collingwood and Richmond having so many, just using those two as examples. Where it is farcical, how many games they get at the G. And because, in reality, it's an extended VFL competition.
And they do have the highest attendance as well, so you've got to be able to fit them in somewhere. Totally get it. All right, mate, let's take a very, very quick break. Coming up, Carl Viet signs off with the Reds, unfortunately going out of the finals. And everybody's on the board in the SANFL with Norwood breaking their duck for 2025.
7, we're on the mark.
And the Adelaide Thunderbirds back in the winner's circle.
You're listening to the Game On Podcast. We'll be right back after this short break.
Looking to buy or sell your home anywhere in Adelaide, from the hills to the sea? Meet Gary KRIEVS, your dedicated local agent from OUWENS CASSERLY Real Estate. With unparalleled knowledge of Adelaide's housing market and a commitment to exceptional service, Gary ensures a smooth and stress-free experience for all your real estate needs. Trust the expert, trust Gary KRIEVS at OUWENS CASSERLY Real Estate. Your next dream home awaits. Contact Gary today on 0422 071 317 or on email garyk@ocre.com.au. And for more listings, please visit owenscasserly.com.au. Make it happen. All right, we thank our sponsors as per usual, mate. All right, let's move on. Adelaide United in the soccer, out of the finals race. But it also looks like there's a huge exodus of players with retirements and transfers on the cards after going down 3-2 to Western United. But once again, leaking goals is the big thing.
We were 1-0 up after 2 minutes, and was it the Paynham Tavern catching up with a few of the guys there?
Yep.
And we said, it's only 2 minutes gone. Even 92 minutes, it wasn't enough. And, sure enough,
And that's been the problem with Adelaide United all year. Adelaide United farewells Carl Viet. I think his tenure has actually been reasonably successful with what he's had to work with, really.
And his passion for South Australian soccer is fantastic.
We really hope that he stays involved there. We might touch a little bit more on the A-League finals over the next couple of weeks, obviously leading into the grand finals as well. All right, let's move on to the SANFL. All teams are on the board for 2025. But Sturt and Glenelg are certainly the teams to beat, but Centrals have surprised a few this year.
Yeah, Sturt, Glenelg, Adelaide and Centrals and West Torrens, it certainly does look, it's going to be a surprise if that's not the final 5.
Yes.
Look, North South, at least North 1, but let's just say it wasn't a game for the ages.
No. We're not replaying that one on loop, that's for sure. Let's talk the state game briefly. Played this weekend before the Port Adelaide Geelong game. Sorry, at Adelaide Oval. Some interesting inclusions from their first hit up against Victoria during Gathering.
Yeah, look, I've only had a quick glimpse, I admit, there. Look, yeah, hopefully South Australia win, but look, I'm not. I respect for the players and all that, but yeah, I'm still not convinced that that's a great deal. State games in that way.
Is it more just maintaining traditions?
Yeah, it is, but geez, the amount of money which gets spent on it, I personally would love that
to go
reinvested
back into umpires or juniors.
Yeah, or even West Adelaide Footy Club and things there. I've got mixed feelings on it.
Fair enough.
I respect the players and all the best of the players, but
let's talk netball. Back in the winner's circle, the Thunderbirds are with a good win against the Queensland Firebirds, 62-53. Bit of a tight tussle early, down I think in the first quarter, but really got it going in the second, third a little bit, but then in the fourth as well.
Hopefully they now kick on.
Absolutely. They now take on the West Coast Fever. They stand in their way to a pretty solid start to the season, even though they're sitting sort of third or second or third on the table at the moment.
Third, I think.
But they are playing, obviously, at home this weekend, 6:30 p.m. Saturday. So if you haven't got your tickets, which I'm sure most of the netball fans have.
Yeah, I think they sell out most games pretty
do.
quick. And look, netball at the elite level is a bloody good sport to watch. Jeez, it's quick.
Absolutely, and it's not wanting for contact either.
Oh, shit, no. It's a bloody physical game for a non-contact sport.
Exactly right. All right, mate, we better scoot through to what's coming up on Friday and Monday. We've got John Cunningham, JC, Part 1.
JC.
Absolutely, and we finish off Phil Harper with Part 3, and Phil was fantastic as well.
Yeah. Yep. Thank you to Harps.
You're listening to the Game On Podcast. We'll be right back after this short break.
Sport. We love it and we live it here at INTERSPORT. We are the heart of sport in our local communities. Family owned and operated, supporting local clubs and the community. INTERSPORT has all the latest products for major brands like Nike, Asics and New Balance at the best prices. Come visit us in store and see why we're your trusted sports experts. INTERSPORT, the heart of sport.
Flashbacks.
Dunstall was only one goal short of equalling Fred Fanning's all-time goal-kicking record when he booted 17 goals against Richmond at Waverley Park. Dunstall, ironically recruited to Glenferrie Oval by Tigers coach Alan Jeans, became only the third player in league history to kick more than 16 goals as he spearheaded the Hawks' 79-point win. The match began with the Hawks first into stride through Hall, but from that point onwards, it turned into the Jason Dunstall show. The brilliant spearhead was running rings around the Tiger defence, marking with ease and in most cases kicking truly. In fact, he kicked 6 of Hawthorn's 7 for the term, and only 3 late goals by the Tigers kept them within 24 points at the first break. In the second quarter, the pattern continued, Dunstall goaling in the opening minutes, but he was lucky to escape serious injury after marking soon afterwards. Although stunned for a minute, Dunstall recovered quickly to post his 8th a minute later, and he was to kick 3 more for the term to finish with a half-time tally of 11. Highlights for the Tigers were few and far between. Maxfield's goal the best of them as they trailed by 47 points at half-time. The only interest in the second half was to whether Dunstall could break Fred Fanning's 45-year-old record of 18 goals. That looked very unlikely when he managed just 2 in the third quarter to take his tally to 13. But his hopes remained alive in the final term. By the 25-minute mark, Dunstall had 17, but the record equaler eluded him. Nonetheless, it was still one of the great performances of modern-day football, helping Hawthorn to a crushing 79-point win.
But I wasn't aware of what the record was. And I know that sounds blasphemous, but being brought up in Queensland, you're not steeped in the history of the game, so I actually didn't know. And it was only late in the game they started flashing things up on the scoreboard out at Waverley. Like 16, I think, was the Waverley record, and then 17 was a Hawthorn record because I think Peter Hudson had kicked 16. So I actually wasn't aware of it. And then when I came off and people saying, well, what were you doing chasing your opponent? As you could have kicked the 18. I mean, that was news to me. So we certainly didn't talk about it at half time. And if there was any talk going on, it more would have been the players bagging me rather than actually saying, let's go after the record, because that's what we did back then. We loved our footy, we loved our time together, and we tried to keep it as light as possible.
Extra time. Big finish.
All right, mate, we thought we would play the flashbacks of Jason Dunstall kicking a lazy 17, considering the forwards had a pretty big weekend this weekend, didn't they?
Disappointing second half, though. He fell away. He only kicked 6, 11 half time. So disappointing there, Jason.
It was indeed, but 17 goals. We forget that some of these great players that kicked big bags. Exactly right. Mate, we got a pretty big extra time, big finish to get through tonight, and I'm going to let you...
Rumour is around that the legend to be elevated to this year may well be the past South Australian great full forward in Ken Farmer. We wait and see on that one. It is a rumour.
Should be an interesting watch. All right, let's talk AFLW. Traditional rivals will clash in round 1 of Game 1, celebrating the 10th season of the AFLW.
Yeah, I reckon they missed a boat there, though. Like, it's one finished 16, one finished 18 last year. Why not have gone with the North Mel? Yeah, the grand final replays. Get a real good standard out there, Game 1.
Yep.
Which I think you've got to still sell the AFLW more in that regard.
Yep.
I don't think you can go, let's just go like they do with the AFL, Collingwood, Richmond, round 1. Richmond, bang. We know we're going to get 70,000, 80,000 there anyway.
Yep.
I still think we've got to sell the product a bit more cleverly than that.
Yep. Let's talk SANFLW. Wins to Sturt, the Panthers, North Adelaide, and the Eagles with a huge win over Glenelg there. So best of luck to those teams in round 8. We won't go through them tonight. We're running out of time here at the moment, but let's talk NBA. Finals time. Star player goes down with a serious injury. We've seen it before. Looks like somebody gets shot from behind and you can hear it. One of their star gun players in the finals this afternoon or this morning does an Achilles.
Yeah.
It's a bugger of an injury, isn't it?
It is. It is shocking. Brian Colby, I've all spoken about that before.
Yep.
At Footy Park, where we thought a gun had gone off.
Yes. The other big one from the NBA is they have a draft lottery, depending on obviously where teams finish.
Yeah.
A team with only 1.55% chance of getting the number 1 pick ends up jagging it.
Yeah, they were actually talking about that on SEN today and saying they were checking the team who finishes bottom and it's got the most number. It hasn't got it since 2019, I think it is.
Yep.
And that. So, yeah.
It is an anomaly that does happen from time to time. The bottom couple of teams do get more chances. Maybe they need a couple more in there and a couple less from the other teams.
Then they said that was causing more tanking during the season, so they removed some. So, not sure.
It's a balancing act. Could you see the AFL bringing in something like that?
We do tend to copy America, but yeah.
It's going to be interesting. All right, let's move on to cricket. Mate, we've got a lot of cricket news to cover here, and we've only got a very short space of time. Let's start off with the obvious one. Cricket legend retires from Test cricket. Kohli has been great for the game. Love him or hate him?
Yeah, look, he has. There's no doubt that. And huge in India and all that. Look, he's great player. And his record in Australia, actually.
It's pretty impressive, isn't it?
Especially the number of hundreds he's made has been ridiculous.
Yes.
So, look, yes, he struggled on the last tour.
Yep.
And I think game had caught up a bit. I think that's...
Well, that was probably the indication, wasn't it?
Yeah, I would have been coming, and I think that was the final one. I think he thought, I'm struggling. I don't really want to go out against the Duke's ball here and all that. Look, another one too, while it's not on the running sheet, we've got to add it. Rest in peace, Bob Cowper.
Yes.
Great player. The last made 307 at the G. I think he's the last player to make a triple century at the G, I think.
Yes. Give you some homework.
I think he's the last Australian.
Yep. Give you some homework to go away with this week.
Clark wasn't at the G, so I think I'm safe there. I will double check that. But yeah, fantastic player. So rest in peace there. We've lost a few lately, cricket-wise, Stacky and and that. So
condolences
RIP.
obviously to the family. Let's move back to the IPL. In doubt once again, on again, off again. How many Australians will actually go back to the IPL? Because now it becomes a legal nightmare, doesn't it?
I'm not. I don't think they could force them to go back. I know I wouldn't be going back.
Do you think this whole resolution was basically made because both cricket competitions were in doubt? Look, I'm just thinking about it from a practicality point of view.
Considering how big the sport is,
this is what I'm saying.
It's not, might be saying it in jest, but look, it's not a silly thought.
No. Yeah. The power brokers within both countries may have got stuff done, but anyway, let's. You sent this one, I think, to me Sunday morning or late Saturday night. Bit of an interesting stat sheet.
It's hilarious.
International game ends with 10 batters being retired in their innings.
Yeah, it was a World Cup qualifier, and there was rain forecast, so I think they were none for 190 odd after 16 overs. You can't declare in a 2020 game. In a 2020 game. So the players were taking a step over the game, retiring. So therefore, you're retired out. They then bowled the opposition out for
56 or 36 or something like that.
Low. It's the record number of ducks, therefore, in one game as well. Yeah, and that it counts as retired out. You see, so there's 9 ducks there amongst it. So I think there's 15 ducks overall. So it's quite incredible.
Is that a loophole that might get changed, or do you just leave it as a unique?
It's unique, but I bet they do try and close it.
What about the other one there in a qualifier where the bowler hits the wicketkeeper's helmet when he's fielding it first or second slip almost?
It was weird.
That was bizarre as well. Yeah. Let's bring it back a little bit more locally. Port Adelaide women to join the Grade 2 cricket in the 25-26 season. This is fantastic.
Yeah, another team, the more the merrier, and that is a good progression for the game.
Absolutely. And to round off cricket tonight, selections have been made for the World Test Championships.
Yeah.
Khawaja, Qantas, Labuschagne, Green, Smith, Head, Webster, Carey, Inglis, Stark, Cummings, Hazelwood, Boland, Lyon, Cunningham, and Doggett as the travelling emergency.
Congratulations to Brendan Doggett to get that spot after his Shield final. Look, the batting spots are going to be very interesting. Look,
what's your gut feel?
They do love Green.
Yep.
He's playing county cricket, made 100 first game, but he's failed every inning since.
Okay.
So it's up in the air what they'll do. I have a hunch that they want to open, therefore, the Labuschagne. Smith would bat 3, Green 4, since they love him so much. But we'll wait and see.
Okay, that's going to be an interesting watch. We'll do that. Mate, very quickly to finish off, State of Origin, it's building up once again to the Game 1 on May 28th. We'll follow that one, obviously, with interest over the next couple of weeks. But the Melbourne Storm give the West Tigers an absolute hiding.
Storm continue, don't they? They're their model of consistency of being up there challenging every year.
I think it was 64-0, which is just insane.
Yeah, it was ridiculous.
For professional sport like that as well. Alex de Minaur, once again, setting all sorts of new records. I've got it here. Slay on clay with his latest triumph in Rome. De Minaur becomes the only man to reach the last 16 of all Masters 1000 events so far in 2025, matching Carlos Alcaraz. He's in good company, isn't he? But he just is lacking that one step, isn't he?
But to get to that spot all the time, he is the model of consistency.
Yeah, it seems to be a bit of a theme through here as well. Well done there, mate. We did mention this a couple of weeks ago, building your ultimate tennis player. We might leave that till next week, give you a bit of homework to do there. Let's finish off with a couple of other topics and hot topics to finish off. Adelaide Lightning remain in the WNBL. Whew.
Yep, thank you to the government there. I think we'll just move on from there.
Absolutely. World Test Cricket final team has been named, which we did talk about. There's obviously a player from South Africa that has been banned because of some doping there.
Yeah, Rabada.
Yes. Yeah. It's a bit of a worry, isn't it?
An interesting one.
And last one to finish us off, we could have talked about it in basketball, but we'll talk about it here. The 36ers are invited to play in the Euro tournament in Sydney, September 18 to 22. Is this good for the club for exposure?
Hopefully. You just love them to get more balanced, more organised, and more just
grunt.
More plateau and that you know what's going on. The 36ers, I think you worry all the time on what's going to happen with them.
I think the Adelaide United are going to be in the same boat with a lot of changes as well. It's going to be a bit up and down for a period of time.
Yep.
Let's see if they can rectify it. All right, mate, we better leave things there. As per usual, please like, rate, subscribe to the channel if you haven't. Share it with your friends, family, enemies, teammates, opposition players, anyone that we want to bring on board as well. We thank you for your time tonight. As per usual, we've got to do better. We'll leave the good, the bad, the ugly for next week. I think we've covered a good chunk of it.
My thoughts there.
Exactly right. Until then, thank you, mate. Thank you to everyone.
Thanks, mate.
In this crazy world we live in, we all need the distraction. Enjoying the show? Like, rate, and subscribe. Hook up and connect with us on social media at SportsCast SA. We'll see you next time on Game On.